What's up, everybody? Mike. I'm tired of hearing about UFOs, but what I'm not tired of hearing about is fucking abductions. I hear you got a zinger for me.
Yeah, I got a good one. It's a new one to me, but it's an older case. But there are UFOs involved in it, so I apologize in advance for the UFOs since you're so sick of them. I'm sorry UFOs aren't cool enough to you anymore, Mateo. You jaded motherfucker.
They are. They're cool. I'm just... I think I've been heightened up to the next level. I'm waiting for the next level. Great UFO videos. I'm the bored kid with my hand on my cheek on his desk. I want to see something come in.
Yeah, well, I feel like all this stuff that's been coming out about UFOs, extremely exciting. That the fact that we're getting like actual confirmation that these things are being studied by the military and the government, and we're getting these declassified videos and all this stuff coming out. It's taking away from some of the weird stuff, and not to like talk shit about what's coming out, because again, it is really fucking exciting and it's nice to finally have it. But I think that they're staying away from the weird stuff because it's not easy to package or to sell to the public. It's not them saying that we know that there's these weird craft, but we don't know anything about the inhabitants or what's going on with them.
Right.
Like that's more easy to sell to the public than there's dick-nosed aliens and they're kidnapping people and they're doing experiments on them and bringing them back to Earth and we can't stop them and there's nothing we can do. That's not an easy sell to the public.
Oh yeah. Well, even if coincidentally, into what we were talking about before we started recording, it's very odd when the weirdest theory ends up being the truth. I mean, like if things keep going the way they're going, that person screaming, sounding like a fanatic is gonna, get the praise when somebody in a suit comes out and says the exact same words in a much calmer tone.
Yeah, and that is weird because that's something that we've talked about on the show a lot. Is what constitutes a reliable witness? Like, is it the position that they hold, like professionally? Like, do we trust the word of a cop over the word of a farmer? Who's more reliable in the public eye when you're looking at their testimony? When they're both humans and they're both capable of lying, just as they're both capable of telling the truth. So to me, the position that a person holds is not so much a factor as what that person has to lose, I think, or what they have to gain based on what they're saying. And if you take a guy who is, say a respected astronomer who made all these like amazing discoveries, and then he comes out and says that there's aliens, then to me, I would believe that guy. Just like when we have Gordon Cooper and Edgar Mitchell, both astronauts, both have been to space, and they both have come out, and they were both actually in the military as well. Gordon Cooper was a fighter pilot in World War II, post World War II, and then he became in the part of the space program, and he's had his own experiences with UFOs, and he's come out and said it. And this is a guy that we have trusted to be a fighter pilot. We've trusted him to go into space. That's something that you can, it's such a small number of humans that have been to space, and we're not just throwing anybody in space. Like, they have to undergo training. There's a lot of tests they've got to pass. There's a lot of things that they have to do. Like, these are like the best of the best that we could possibly be sending up there. And I think if they're saying something, then we can believe that. But when it comes to like saying, oh, this guy's a cop and he's got it and he's telling this story, or this guy's a businessman and there's no difference between the businessman and the cop. You know, they're not trained to deal with fucking mystery objects that came from space and identify them. So to me, what they're saying, I think in most cases, we're not seeing people that are, I think what is being reported is accurate to the people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think a lot of these stories are fabricated, because if you look at these, a lot of the people that report their stories, they're not making money off of these stories, you know, and why would you seek out recognition and in many cases hold on to this story until you die when it's fake? You know, it just seems like a lot of work to go through your life with very little reward. Like, oh, that's the guy who was abducted by a UFO. Like, who wants to be known as that guy, especially if you're not making money off it? I mean, you've got your rare cases like Whitley Strieber, who's made a living off of his experience. But he's kind of the one who really brought the abduction thing to the forefront. And his story, like his story is so well known and so famous. They made a movie off of it. There's been books. He's got his own podcast. He's been on countless radio shows and done millions of interviews. So, you know, he's one of the rare cases, though.
Yeah, right. Most people who go through something like that are usually just somebody telling their story.
Yeah. Like, look at the people, the Hopkinsville Goblin people, the witnesses to that case. Like, they didn't want people to show up at their farm. They didn't want people to show up. They didn't want it to be like this big thing where they were getting famous off it. They reported it because they were genuinely terrified.
Yeah, look at Woody Derenberger, you know, ostracized and so much that he had to move and lost his wife, and all, you know, it came at great cost.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. I don't remember how we started talking about this rabbit hole, but but yeah. Anyway, I've got an abduction case to talk about, and this case specifically, the two people who are involved have been called out for perpetrating a hoax. The reason being that they didn't tell their story until 10 years after the fact. And the interesting thing was that only one of the people reported it initially. The researcher for the case actually had to track down to get her testimony. It's the story of the Buff Ledge UFO abductions. And Buff Ledge, it was called Buff Ledge Camp, and it was a all girls camp in Vermont. It's actually on the shore of Lake Champlain.
Ooh.
Yeah, you've already got a spooky monster living in the water. Now you've got fucking aliens stealing people. And interestingly enough, like this whole area, we'll have to do a show on it sometime, but there's a book about this whole area around Lake Champlain, like that includes parts of New York and northern New York and southern Vermont. But there's a whole book about haunted areas and monster sightings and UFOs and shit like that all around Lake Champlain. So I'll have to get that book, and we'll do a show on that at some point.
Nice.
So the events of this night, or of this particular case, happened on August 7th, 1968. And a 16-year-old maintenance worker at the camp, Michael Lapp, was with a 19-year-old ski instructor, or water ski instructor, Janet Cornell. And they were hanging out on the boat dock, just, you know, being teenagers, hanging out, watching the stars, watching the sky. At this point, it was sunset. The sun was just going down, so the sky was like that dark blue color with the orange and pink in the distant horizon and the sun and all that sexiness, perfect for summer love. But this particular day at camp, most of the campers had gone to a swim meet that was away from the camp. So it was relatively quiet. There were just a few people left behind, and they were just hanging out together, enjoying the quiet, watching the sky. And they saw this bright light appear. Now, keep in mind, this is still sunset. So, the only stars that would likely be visible would be probably Venus. And actually that's what Michael thought it was at first. He thought that they were seeing Venus, and he said it seemed really strange because it was very bright, and it just kind of suddenly appeared out of nowhere, just this bright star in the sky. But then he said it dropped from its position and flew lower to the ground. And as he was watching it, it not only came closer to the ground, but started moving closer towards them on the dock. And it started out looking like a bright orb, but then as it got closer, the light kind of flattened, and then there were three smaller lights that came out from it, and they started doing all these weird maneuvers over the water of the lake. They were zigzagging and doing flips and all sorts of wacky shit going on that no helicopter or airplane would be able to pull off. Just these crazy maneuvers flying over the water. And then they formed the triangle shape. But as soon as they formed the triangle shape, the two in the back moved away, and then the one in the front moved forward. And as it moved forward, it gave off this humming sound that they described as being like 1,000 tuning forks. And it became really uncomfortable. I don't know if it was the vibration or the sound itself, but they said it caused them to become really uncomfortable feeling. And then the object flew straight up into the air and then came flying straight down into the lake, and it disappeared underneath the surface of the water. And then it slowly reappeared and started gliding across the top of the water, heading straight for them.
Oh, God.
Yeah, just imagine that, man. Like, you're seeing all these crazy aerials, and then just this one starts coming at you, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to go straight up in the air, then I'm going to go flying straight down, and now coming straight across right directly at you over the surface. God damn, that would be fucking terrifying.
Yeah, imagine the sound the water would make alone. The huge splash of it going into the water, then it emerging and all the water rolling off of it. That would be scary.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. So this craft is coming towards them. They said it's a disc-shaped craft, and as it got closer, Michael noticed this transparent dome that was over the top of it. And he said inside the dome, he could make out these two childlike creatures. And they had elongated necks, really big heads, and big eyes that he said stretched around to the sides of their heads.
Oh.
And as it moved closer, it started to come up out of the water more, and then it lifted above them and floated over their heads. And it shot this light down on them. And the light was so bright that Michael said he was able to recall being able to see his bones through his skin.
Whoa.
As if it was being shined on like an X-ray light or something. And he said as the light passed over, they felt like they were floating, but he said the light had a liquid type feeling to it, which that description to me is really interesting because a lot of the people that reported seeing that huge light formation over Phoenix in 97, the ones who actually saw it pass over their heads, they said that the light inside it looked like it was liquid. Like it was a liquid ball of light rather than like a light bulb. But I mean, that didn't beam anything down, so no one could describe the way it felt. But it's interesting to me that it was described in that way.
Yeah. Imagine them being able to partially solidify light like that, maybe?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's like a plasma type thing.
Yeah.
But as the light passed over them, Michael remembered calling out that they don't want to go, because all that he could think about, this was shortly after Betty and Barney Hill too. It was 61, I think, was Betty and Barney Hill. So this is like 7 years after. So at this point, the Betty and Barney Hill case had made its rounds, and other people had reported abductions. There were a lot of abduction reports in the 60s for some reason. So he was aware of the stories, and that's all he could think about when he saw this thing shining light down, was that it was going to abduct him. So he called out, "We don't want to go." And then the next thing he remembers, they were sitting there on the boat dock. The big bright light that they had originally seen was gone, and the disc that was just over them was now farther distance away, and it was moving away from them. They also noticed that the sky was no longer sunset. It was complete night. They could see the stars. They heard the noises of everyone back at camp. So the swim meet was over. So they had been gone. They had this huge chunk of time that was missing, somewhere between sunset and nighttime. So there's like 2 to 3 hours in there probably that they had been missing. But that's all that Michael could remember about it for years. And he described it, and Janet also explained things the same way. But he said when the craft was approaching them and they were able to see these beings inside, he said it almost felt like there was a connection between them and the beings that were in this craft. And he said it even mimicked his actions at one point. He said he slapped his leg, and one of the beings in the craft slapped his leg in the same way right after he did it. So it was almost like he was, I don't know, following along with them or what the deal was. But he couldn't really place it, but he said it felt like they were connected and like almost communicating in some way without using words. But that's all that he could remember about it for over a decade. But him and Janet, for some reason, after he came to and noticed it was nighttime and saw the craft flying away, he looked over and Janet looked like she was in a trance. And so he had to work to rouse her and bring her back. And for some reason, neither one of them talked about it at all. For the rest of the time they were at the camp, they didn't mention it. And then afterwards, they didn't talk. They lost contact, and that was that.
You hear that so many times, and that's so weird to me. I don't see how two people can ignore an event like that happening to both of them at the same time.
It could be related to screen memories, or like a post-hypnotic suggestion type thing. Whatever is done to make the person forget about the events that they went through, maybe it creates this almost like an emotional block with the person that you were with, so that you don't remember. Because maybe if you're with that person, you have that shared experience, and it'll get through because you both had these weird experiences, and as you're trying to put the pieces back together, one person will have a memory that'll trigger something, and then eventually the walls just crumble and everything comes out. It could have been like a with the Betty and Barney Hill thing, like, oh shit, we got to be more careful with that. They remembered too much. I don't know. But that, to me, that seems like that would be the case, because it does happen a lot. Like even people that were best friends going into something, and they have this weird experience together, and then usually one person is the one that remembers, and the other person goes completely cold, like just completely shuts that other person out. And I don't know if that's the case here, or if it was just like a summer fling, or they were just, friends at camp. Because, I mean, there was a 3-year difference. So after the summer, Michael would have been going back to high school. Janet could have been going off to college or doing whatever,
Right. Very true.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly what their situation was, but after camp, they went their separate ways and lived lives. But where the story came out was Michael started having these terrible nightmares. And it was just these nightmares where he'd relive the moment where the craft was over them and him telling him that they didn't want to go. Then he'd have these like kind of broken memories, or they were what he thought were dreams of his abduction experience. So it got to the point where it got to be too much. He's like, I need to get to the bottom of this. I saw this UFO. I remember that much, and I don't know what happened after that. So he contacted the Center for UFO Studies, and a researcher by the name of Walter Webb was the one that started researching the case. And after talking to him and realizing that he had some missing time, Walter suggested that Michael goes under hypnotic regression so that he would be able to figure out what happened. And almost immediately, once he went under, he started recalling the events that happened while he was missing. What he remembered, as soon as he went under, he was being asked about it. He had the events up to where the light came down and he saw the X-ray. And what he had forgotten about was that the light actually lifted both Michael and Janet, and he saw these streams of colored lights and a loud whining noise as they were getting closer to the flying saucer. Then he remembers being inside of the craft, and he saw Janet lying on a metal table being examined, and there were a bunch of the little beings surrounding her. He said they were about 5 feet tall, and he said they had pale bluish green skin, and their hands were 3-fingered hands that were kind of webbed, and their skin had a wet, clammy look to the.
Lovely.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting that, again, we see the repetition of the 3 fingers, though, which is something that gets repeated a lot with certain alien sightings, like the Hopkinsville goblins, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Bigfoot sightings, or not, I shouldn't say Bigfoot, but of a lot of large footprint casts that are taken have the 3 toes, and there's been weird 3-fingered smaller sized prints that have been found in stone, which, I mean, maybe, who knows what that could be, but I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things that you see in other reports in this story, which is what makes it so cool to me. For some reason, though, when they were taken on board, Janet was the one that was being examined, and he was able to look down on, he said he was on this kind of upper level looking down on the examining, and they were taking samples of her skin, her hair, and her blood. He was able to look up out of the dome because it was transparent, and he said that from his viewpoint, he was able to see Earth and the moon and the stars of space. So basically, he was outside of Earth's orbit, and he was able to see this huge cigar-shaped craft that to him, it looked like that it was the mothership. So to his memory, he was actually in space. So these things abducted him and took him to space.
Mm-hmm.
One of these beings was with him while he was looking down at the examination, and he said it communicated to him through their mind, and it told him that their mission was to make life like ours in other places. And he didn't understand what that meant. So he kind of through this mental communication, asked, what do you mean by that? And basically, it came to his mind that they wanted life on Earth to be like their home planet, which no longer had any violence. And he said that the being kind of seemed surprised that he was communicating back and questioning him through their mind. I guess he assumed that he should have been under some sort of trance, because he told him that once this experience was over, things were going to be difficult for him. And he didn't know if that was a threat or if it was like a warning. But he said that he got the feeling, like he had a feeling like this being was friendly, and that they were close, like almost like they had a relationship.
That's weird.
Yeah, but it also makes me think, like, if they're putting people under some sort of trance, and sure, he might have been a little more lucid, but the fact that he didn't remember about it makes me think that he was still kind of in a trance. So maybe part of that is making them suggestible, so that they feel like this person, because this person is their connection to the events that are going on, that they become close to them or feel like they can trust this being, when really, who knows if you can. It's just you're being hypnotized, basically. But as they were looking down at Janet, this being led Michael down a set of stairs to the floor where Janet was, and then walked Michael over to a table, and the table tilted so it was in almost upright, and he was led to the table, and it went down into horizontal position, and the last thing that he could remember from the hypnotic regression was looking out of the transparent dome and seeing this cigar-shaped craft, and then he lost consciousness.
Oh, good. I was hoping that wasn't the part that was going to be difficult for him remembering.
No, I think they were referring to the nightmares that he was going to endure as a result, because he would have some memory of what happened, even because he was semi-lucid. And I think that's why he was going to have, why they knew he would have a rough time, because he wasn't fully under. So like, well, shit, you're going to have some shit to work through, buddy. Yeah. My bad.
That sucks. They're whatever anesthesia they use to do this. The aliens are like, shit, sometimes it just doesn't take.
Yeah.
Sorry about frying your brain, bro.
I didn't mean it. Aliens can be real jerks,
I mean, very few times you hear about people getting abducted and then steak being brought out, maybe some fried shrimps, a couple sodas. They're like, hey.
Yeah, why can't they abduct you and be like, hey, would you like a back massage?
Yeah, holy shit.
Yeah. Like, hey, we want you to try this really awesome snack that's only from space. You don't have it on Earth. Would you like some snacks? I would like some space snacks, please.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I'll take some.
Oh, yeah. But no, it's always got to be, we're taking your blood and stealing your face.
Yeah, sticking things in your...
And impregnating you with half-alien babies.
Yeah. Taking samples.
Poking and prodding and exploding cows like dicks. But anyway, after having Michael undergo the hypnotic regression, wanted to track down Janet to see if she would be willing to undergo regression therapy. So he was able to track her down. Keep in mind, this is 10 years later, so she's now 29 years old. She's married, living life, and she actually agrees to it. And so they put her under hypnosis, and her recollection is very similar to Michael's.
Oh, wow.
She recalls laying on an examination table, and she said she feels the cold metal underneath her, and she said she felt like something was pulling her hair and pinching her neck. But she also has a recollection of being guided around the craft by a being like the being Michael described. And she said during this whole abduction, poking, prodding experience, this guide was her only source of comfort. So again, it's weird that they both had the same experience with this guide who offered them some comfort and kind of took them around the ship. Like, is this like from a movie, like they're all asshole aliens, but then there's this one good alien who's like, no, I'll be cool to you guys because these guys are dicks and I'm really a good guy. And when you're gone, they secretly pick on me because I'm the nice guy and they're all dicks. Or was it just a hypnosis type experience?
Maybe they have somebody on personnel like that. Like you are responsible for maintaining this person's anxieties and worries. Like, if they're just taking hair and skin and blood samples, that's not that big of a deal. It wouldn't take that heavy of a sedation to pull something like that off. So there's going to be the soothsayer who's going to be like, everything's okay. They're steak and shrimp at the back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting to me that despite having no contact for 10 years, that Janet had the same recollection when put under hypnosis.
Yeah, not having spoken in 10 years, but not even speaking about the event after it happened.
Afterward, yeah.
Yeah, how do you explain something like that? I mean...
Well, what the skeptics say that Janet and Michael concocted this whole thing, and they must have been keeping in touch and decided to make up this fucking story for some stupid reason. Makes no sense, but they decided 10 years later to make up a story about when they were kids at camp. It doesn't make any sense.
No.
And Walter Webb, the investigator, now keep in mind he does, I would say, have a certain bias, given that he works for the Center for UFO Research, but he's also the one who's investigating this and looking into it. And he actually did extensive research with other ex-employees at the summer camp and any guests who were there during the summer of 1968. And he actually discovered that there were a bunch of people, that both employees and guests that were there, that had witnessed weird lights over Lake Champlain on that exact same night that Michael and Janet were abducted. And in further investigating, he found two other employees who reported a similar experience a few weeks earlier in July in the same area.
No way. Did he get to talk to those people at all?
Yeah, it was basically the same story, except I don't know if they underwent hypnotic therapy or not, but they explained seeing these weird lights over the waters, and then they saw the discs come in, and then they had missing time.
If it was that investigator's suggestion to the other couple to go under hypnosis, I don't see why he wouldn't with them. I wonder if they weren't willing.
Yeah, I don't know. Getting hypnotized is a whole, it's kind of a scary thing, and I don't think even under the best of conditions, a lot of people would be very comfortable doing it, let alone under traumatic conditions where you might be recalling super terrifying things that transpired.
Yeah, I find hypnosis kind of scary a little bit. I had a couple of friends who've been hypnotized and had experiences with that, which I've talked about before. So I'm kind of don't know where I stand when it comes to that stuff, but it seems to work for what it's supposed to.
Yeah, I'm kind of afraid of it. Just because, like, you're allowing someone inside your head, and you're allowing someone to mess with your head in a very specific and intimate way. That being said, I always have been kind of interested in it, more just to find out what the fuck I'm doing when I short the circuits in the kitchen. I want to know why I do that. And I would like to try to remember why I'm getting out of bed and shorting the circuits in my kitchen. Since I've moved, I haven't done any sleepwalking though.
Oh wow,
that I know of.
Okay,
so that's cool.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I actually got to watch a video of a friend of mine be hypnotized, and when I watched it, there's nothing that person does that would be able to get me to go to sleep or go into any type of subconscious area of existence. So, but I saw them react in very strange ways and do very strange things, and even some friends that completely changed certain aspects of their behavior. So, I guess there's something to be said about it.
Yeah, I just don't want someone tinkering around in my head, you know? Like, what if it has lasting effects? What if like weird things echo in there?
Oh yeah,
You know?
all I need is to be hypnotized and to discover that I've always believed I was Koltar, the most bloodthirsty Viking warrior of all, and just spring up and start smashing people. Who knows what goes on when you mess with those layers of the mind?
Yeah, or like if you're undergoing hypnotic regression therapy, and what if you have a shitty hypnotherapist and they start like making suggestions, like what if I want to see why I'm short-circuiting my kitchen, and they start asking me about aliens, and then I start getting the belief that I was abducted by aliens, and it was when they put me back into my house, that's when the circuit shorted out and triggered, and then I woke up when I heard the click of the fuse.
Right, and I think that's my hang up with with doing something like that as well. Is that I don't see how somebody's going to go into a room with somebody who's going to hypnotize them by themselves, maybe fall asleep, and then believe anything that person says.
I would want that shit recorded, and I would want someone I'd trust in the room with me.
Yeah, and I don't think too many of them would be open to that.
Yeah.
And when you look at it like that, it's kind of like a fortune teller almost.
Yeah, I don't. It's just the human mind is fucking weird, though. Like the way that it can deceive itself, and then make itself believe its own created deception. It's like we lie to ourselves all the time, and then like our memory is flawed, so we remember things a specific way, and to us that's the absolute truth. But to other people that were there, they're like, no, that's not the way it happened. This is the way it happened. But you remember it this way. They remember it that way. Who's remembering it the correct way? You know, and I don't know if hypnotizing someone can really get all of that out, because, you know, at what point are you remembering things exactly as they were, or are you remembering a memory, you know, a fabricated memory, or an embellished memory, or a misunderstood memory? Or are you combining memories?
Yeah, you got to have somebody asking the right questions the right way. You know, not say something to the effect of, you know, when you see the light, what happened next? You know, did you see a light? Or let them tell the story. Yeah, it could be very tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't want to lead them, but you got to get the answers, but you can't ask questions that are going to lead them to a specific result, or, you know, I don't know. It seems really sketchy to me. And same with like the people that do the past life regression hypnosis. Like, again, to me, that's like you're hypnotizing someone and then having them like tell you a fantasy or something. You know, who's to say that's a past life or not just a fantasy that somebody's concocting in their brain?
Absolutely.
I don't know. Maybe it's quackery. Maybe it's just quackery at its finest.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen a video of my friend be hypnotized to where it was in like an entertainment setting, and they had him do some weird shit.
Yeah.
And
like make him cluck like a chicken and pull his shirt over his head like cornholio or something.
Yeah, and the stuff they wouldn't do. I mean, the stuff they wouldn't do out of just embarrassment. It's not their personality type to go up there and cluck like a chicken, even to go along with a joke. But it's just
right.
And then to talk to them afterwards and have them say, "Dude, I have no memory of what happened." So I don't know. I would be hypnotized if I had someone there with me, for sure. Because people are going to be more open to that stuff. That's just going to work for people more than it would for other people. I mean, it's one of my favorite quotes for you ever is, if you tell me I can go to sleep, I will. So I'm sure somebody like that's going to lay down a chair and listen to some ASMR type voice, and they're gonna pass right out. So who knows? And for me, somebody who doesn't sleep like me, I'm sure some guy sitting there going, "You're sleepy." I'm gonna go, "Fuck you."
But it's not about making you fall asleep though. It's about triggering the areas of your brain to make you relax and make you susceptible to suggestion. That's all that it's about.
Yeah, I just don't believe somebody's gonna do that with their voice. We talk about binaural beats and stuff like that. Yeah, I can get into something like that and believe that, but somebody talking and having me look at a swinging watch or something like that.
Well, here's what we're gonna do. When I come out there, we're gonna get 2 hypnosis sessions, and we're going to record it for Patreon only. and we'll see if Mateo can get hypnotized, and we'll see if I was abducted by aliens.
I will totally do it.
But it's only going to be on Patreon. Patreon only. Sorry guys. If you want it, you gotta go to patreon.com/thewhatcast and do that whole thing.
Can we film it and blur out my face?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. And even though people hear your voice on a weekly basis, we're also going to distort your voice so that you sound like this.
Good, in case I start slipping into something like, "I keep peeing my pants," or something weird.
Yeah. Then you've got plausible deniability at that point.
Yeah. That wasn't me in the video at all. You guys are jerks.
Yeah. I'm going to wear a Pope mask the entire time. So.
What if they uncover something gnarly, dude? What if you just instantly start screaming about blue lights and your skin being pinched and your hair being pulled?
I mean, I was really freaked out a few years ago and I believe I told you about this. I never talked about it on the show. I guess I'll talk about it now. But a few years ago, I woke up one morning and it felt like I had a bruise on my ribs. And I touched my ribs and there was, I don't know what it was. It like I could feel something under the skin on my ribs. And like I would rub over the bone on my ribs and it was kind of like, it would kind of move a little bit when I moved my fingers over it. But it was definitely something, and you could even see it when you were looking at it. And for a couple days, there was just a tiny bruise, and then the bruise went away, but whatever it was under the skin was still there. And, you could feel it. It was, and if I were to lay on my side, it hurt. So I went to the doctor to get it looked at, and, he was feeling it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's wow." And he goes, "Did you ever have an injury there?" And I said, "No." And he said it felt like scar tissue that was on my ribs. And he said he wanted me to go get a ultrasound to see what it was, because I didn't have I've never had an injury there. I've never had surgery there. Like, there was no reason for me to have scar tissue, especially just out of nowhere. So I made the appointment, but I couldn't get in to get the ultrasound for like a week. And when I went to see the doctor, this had been under my skin for about a month at that point. That's when I decided to call the doctor. Between me going to see the doctor and the day of, actually it was the day before my ultrasound, I couldn't feel it anymore. And then I went to the ultrasound and the ultrasound showed nothing. So I have no idea what it was, but whatever it was disappeared the day before my ultrasound. But I remember I was like, when he told me it was scar tissue, that really freaked me out, because I never had any. I'm like, what the fuck? Why do I have scar tissue there? And why did it just appear out of nowhere? And then I'm thinking about these alien abduction cases where people will like say that they had surgery and all that was left was like a thin line from their surgery. And it was completely undetectable after they were abducted. And I was like, oh my God, did I have alien surgery done on me? Did they put something under my skin? What the fuck? And then when it was gone, like I couldn't feel it anymore the day before my ultrasound. And then they did the ultrasound and they didn't find anything. I'm like, oh my God, they took it out. Whatever it was, they removed it.
Yeah, that would freak me out a little bit too, because you're not sitting there, wondering about it. A lot of us have scars that we can feel and we're familiar with.
Yeah.
Scar tissue. So, I mean, you're talking to a doctor, so I would have been like,
yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, because like at first, like sometimes people get like these weird lumps under their skin, and it's just like this benign fatty thing that just kind of forms, and then sometimes the body will reabsorb it. Sometimes you have to get it removed. I thought it was something like that. I have never had one, but that's what I just assumed it was, feeling it, because it kind of, I remember one of my old dogs had one on her chest when she got older, and that's kind of what it felt like, but it hurt for me, and I know that they're not supposed to hurt. So I was worried at first that it was something like a tumor or something, and I'm like, oh God, because it like hurt, but it kind of moved a little bit, and then when he told me it was scar tissue, like that really for some reason that freaked me out more than him telling me it could be a fucking tumor. I'm like, oh God, why do I have scar tissue?
That's funny. That would have gave me relief. I would have thought, well, whatever was done was done. But yeah, I wouldn't have paid too much.
I don't know. Like, it just freaked me out because there's no reason why I would have had scar tissue there. There's just no reason.
Yeah.
And I still have no idea. They did the ultrasound and there was nothing there, and I could no longer feel it. It wasn't causing me discomfort. So what am I going to do? Nothing more I could do about it. It's gone. Whatever it was is gone. To be clear, I'm not saying that I was abducted. Like, I don't think I was really abducted. To me, it's just a weird thing that happened. I don't have an explanation for it, but it's, I don't know.
You're patient 17.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, man, I wish that doctor wasn't dead. I would have him take this out and he'd fucking examine it, tell me exactly what it is.
Yikes.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I don't know what it was, but it was weird, and I'll never have an answer to it, so I don't know.
Well, when we get hypnotized, we'll have them.
When we get hypnotized,
you.
I'll find out.
Yeah.
I will find out if I was abducted by aliens. So, but remember, it's Patreon only.
What if you found out you are the father of a space baby?
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah?
I would love it. Yeah, dude. I would hope that he would come visit me, like, when he's old enough to drive his own spacecraft, and be like, Dad, I've come all this way from across the galaxy to reunite with you. I'd be like, oh my God, my son, come to me. And then we'd hug and embrace, and then he'd probably inject me with something to make me pass out, and I wake up in space, and he's like, now we're going to have so many space adventures, Dad. We're going to go on all the space adventures that we couldn't do because you were stuck on Earth when I was a little kid. And then, we'd be a father and son spacefaring duo. Then it'd be like, I've got kids back on Earth. And be like, screw your kids back on Earth. I'm a space kid. And because I'm, an Earth guy, what am I going to do? I can't fly a fucking spaceship. So my own son abducts me and takes me to space. And then meanwhile, my Earth sons are like, oh my God, Dad was abducted by Space Son and my space brother, but he's going to be one of those dick space brothers. And especially because he'll be younger than both of them, he's really going to have a chip on his shoulder. Oh, Earth Dad got to hang out with the Earth kids, but because I'm a space kid, he doesn't want anything to do with me. I'll be like, bitch, I didn't even know you existed.
Instantly, your son's a bitch. It sounds like...
Well, yeah, if he's going to start acting like that, I mean, come on. Didn't your space mom tell you that I was basically drugged and hypnotized to forget that it even happened? I bet she failed to mention that, didn't she? My mom would never do that. Stop talking about my mom. You're the one that wasn't there for me. You know what, you ungrateful son of a bitch? Take me back to Earth.
Coming this summer, a family alien movie about spacism.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.